Greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi with episode 4, edition 4 of Leaders with Leaders. Joining me here today is the commander of the 2nd Air Support Operations Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Hayek. Colonel Hayek, thank you so much for being here.
Cheers.
Being part of the Cape Lead Revolution.
Appreciate the time, Chief.
So we are here for the officer accessions into our career field inside the United States Air Force. And so you get to be the hiring authority this time. So you are the person who gets to make the decisions. This is the first time that this is happening in the history of the officer career field in TACP. And for us, for the guys that call on airstrikes, having dedicated permanent officers in the career field is something that we'd wanted for years. And for the first 15 years of my career, that did not exist. Mm-hmm. So only in the past 10 years have we had this. And so Colonel Hayek is also our first organic commander that we have, a true career beret wearer, being a commander. And so you absolutely have the distinction of being the first lieutenant colonel guest on my show and the first squadron commander guest.
Nice.
So far it's gone, for video or otherwise, it's gone 3-star general, colonel, and now you, sir.
Just working your way down the chain.
Just work. We're gonna have a butter bar in here soon.
Outstanding.
And we'll kind of see what happens. But the cool part about this is just the conversations that you and I have had for the past few days. And so obviously you know that I've been working on the Cape concept, but instinctively, intuitively, you've come to your own conclusions with these. I just put a name to it.
Okay.
And so which is why I'm so excited to have you here. So we'll just kind of go with the conversation, see what our viewers and listeners think, and we will get this rocking.
No, I'm excited, Chief. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and do this.
So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about you, likes, favorites, or one of the coolest things that one of my wing commanders used to have people do, like commanders with the wing, or lunches with the wing commander. Mm-hmm. He'd make them sit around and divulge one of their kind of hidden secrets,
hidden
just
gems.
a guilty pleasure, if you will.
Guilty pleasure. Well, I have 2 stories, Chief, that I can share. First one is I had a similar experience with my current wing commander. New squadron commander staff meeting. Introduces me, and says the exact same thing. Tell us something we don't know about you. And I took a gamble to try to be true to myself, and I told him I was a Hooters wing eating champion and a Missouri State Fair Best Buns contest winner. And he bought it right away, and I had to say, no, sir, actually, full disclosure is I'm a compulsive liar. So we backed off that one. But recent guilty pleasure is actually my wife and I really enjoy watching baking shows, for as odd as that sounds. It started probably 2 years ago where we were watching the Great American Holiday Bake Off or something weird like that. And it's like a 60-minute show. We didn't realize that, and 30 minutes into it, we looked at each other and we're like, we're watching people bake cookies. Like, what's wrong with us? But yeah, that's my secret guilty pleasure. And deployed last summer, trying to turn AFN off, turn TV off in the back office, and one of the night shift guys walks in as I'm getting ready to turn it off, but I'm glued to this baking show. And he walked in, and you would have thought I was watching something illicit, and I really wasn't. And I tried to invite him to watch it with me. He's like, "No, sir, you take this time for yourself." And he left the room. So.
Oh, sir, that's cute. Pinch your cheeks and walk out.
Cute little guy.
So this whole 13 Lima development thing, this is the new, one of the newest, if not the newest, officer career field inside the Air Force. So I remember starting that, and so the big push was just to get officers in, and we did that. So once we had you guys, we didn't really know what to do with you as far as career progression and see how that lined out. And then we want to get people in the power position soon. So as a major, you were already the career field manager for the 13 Lima, the TACP officer. And now as a squadron commander, where do you see your role as a leader being as far as just kind of really the trendsetter for your officers?
Yeah, trendsetter's a lofty title. I think we're at a point in development, and I think what I appreciate most about the opportunity that the last 10 years has afforded me and us is that we kind of started with a half-baked idea and we just moved out with it, right? And I think that's the whole point of, or the success to development, right? Like, you've got an idea, you're never going to have a perfect moment for it. You've got history to back up, what has kind of shaped your vision, and it's okay, move out, right? Like, let's do this. So we've come through 10 years of evolution, 10 years of progress, 10 years of, you know, trying an idea, seeing if it works, seeing where it goes. Right now, I think we've grown to a point in the population where we have multiple lines of effort, right? Like multiple half-baked ideas cooking off. Some of the original half-baked ideas have gone full-baked. And I don't know if you've picked up on my baking metaphors here in the last probably 2 minutes, but
that may be a general Hayek thing.
It ties right back into my baking show fetish as well. But in all seriousness, Chief, yeah, that's so you asked, like, you know, trendsetter. It's at this point in time, it's enabling ideas, right? It's enabling other people's vision, because we have a crop of leaders, we have a crop of decision makers that they have more than a year's worth of experience now. You know, they've got more than 1 or 2 deployments. They've got 1 or 2 more schools and stuff to their credit. So now you're looking at resumes that are getting more robust, and with experience comes ideas, right? So these guys are now starting to formulate more and more ideas, and then you have to test ideas, you have to experiment, you have to try to apply them, you know, and see where the successes are and see where the failures are. So we've kind of done the initial 10 years of research and development with successes, and now we're moving into like the Gen 2, if you will, and you could probably even argue that it might be Gen 3 or Gen 4, depending on how you look at it. But really, it's that point of like, okay, there's so many ideas out there. How do we start to like let dudes loose, and dudettes loose, so that they can go and you know, bring the ideas to fruition, or you know, or failure, you know, whatever the case is, because you're gonna break a few eggs making that omelet, and then just kind of reap the rewards. But at this point in time, it's a matter of enabling, and then controlling is not the right word, but manage, if you will, or even inspire or motivate, to keep folks like moving in that direction and moving forward, in order to meet need and meet demand and stuff like that.
So I took so many notes just off of that, and again, as my man crush for you grows, it's just one of those things. And for our viewers and the listeners out there, you know, so you're talking about dudes and dudettes. You know, I say that all the time, and we talked about, you know, the concept of good dudership. Yep. You know, just being good dudes. Yeah, so I used to say dudettes, and then one of my childhood friends, she's a lawyer in Kansas City, Mara Correa, she's like, Tim, I don't mind if you call me a chick. And it's so weird, because the 2 best compliments that I could give people today is, hey, he's a good dude. Yeah. She's an awesome chick.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so cultivating that culture of good dudes and good chicks is huge. You were talking about, you know, inspire and motivate, which is a podcast that I've done like within the last 2 months or so. So check that out. The difference between motivation and inspiration. Have you thought about that? But the one thing I do want to say before we get into is the whole baking thing. And so you and I have talked about Lieutenant General Jeffrey Harigian, who was the CFAC when we were deployed downrange. You and I are different locations, but deployed together. You know, and his idea of how to integrate air power into any ground combat scheme of maneuver. The phenomenal quote is you know, air power is not sprinkled on. Yeah. Air power needs to be baked in.
Exactly.
And I think that's just a good metaphor for anyone to understand, how are you applying this? And then and then it's for, because people ask the age-old question is, what's more important, the mission or the men? Yeah. I view that to be a unfair question.
I agree.
Because it's talking about apples and oranges. Because even if we weren't at war, if there were no global war on terror, we would still have a mission.
Correct.
And so it can't be a choice between the mission or the men, because step 1 in accomplishing the mission is not, we got to accomplish the mission. Yeah. Step 1 has to be take care of the men. Exactly. Take care of the women, take care of the teammates, however you want to say that. So that's kind of how I view it. But then lastly, you were talking about you know, experience and ideas, and so many different ideas. How do you cultivate a culture that will allow for the sharing of ideas without bias, without judgment, without critique? What do you do to help that inside of your organization?
So for me, for me personally, you know, I look back on the last, you know, 15 plus years of being in the military, being in the Air Force, and I had some great leaders that really afforded me the opportunity to speak out, right? But it wasn't in the sense of speaking out in terms of, I think this is a bad idea, or I'm frustrated, or I don't like this. They had a way to cultivate the positive, right? Like glass half full kind of thing.
Sure.
And it was more of like I had an idea and they wanted to hear the idea. And as long as it wasn't, something along the lines of, illegal, immoral, indifferent, it was like, all right, go ahead, Mike. Like let's see where this one takes us. So when I took command, right, when I was charged with the responsibility of people and ideas and things, on the level that it is right now, I thought back to when I was a lieutenant, right, and I want everybody to be a decision maker, like within your scope of practice. And I think that's what people kind of forget is that there are multiple scopes of practice, right? So my dad taught me this actually. He was a trauma surgeon, and I worked in his emergency room as an EMT, and his scope of practice as the trauma director was mammoth, right? Like he had the nurses, he had the anesthesiologist, he had all these people. Mine as the EMT, my scope of practice was yay tiny, and it was, hey, do these things, draw this blood, whatever the case is. But with time and with experience, my scope of practice kind of widened to bigger and more responsibilities. So within the squadron, I look at helping to define an individual's scope of practice. Where are you within the flight? Where are you within the team? Where are you within the squadron? So as a squadron commander and with my squadron superintendent, our scope of practice is large, within the squadron. But then you look at the A1C or the senior airman or even the lieutenant, and their scope of practice is a little bit smaller, but still just as critical and just as important, because they're seeing stuff within their scope of practice, but they need to be empowered to either fix it or cultivate it or like take ownership of that, right? So I try to be very clear that the example I'll give you is 3-drawer filing cabinets. Like it's a frustration of mine. I got to the second and there were like 400 3-drawer filing cabinets. Some of them were holding up coffee makers. Some of them were collecting dust. Some of them were holding down the floor. I don't know. They were just there. And then I looked around and I was like, guys, why do we have all these 3-drawer filing cabinets? They're like, well, so they came with the building. When was the last time we used them? Well, this one's doing this one's doing that. One of them was holding papers from 2012 or something like that. So I told them, I was like, guys, throw away the ones you don't need. Keep what you need, but throw away these ones you don't need. And a lot of them, they weren't brand spanking new or anything, like busted wheels, stuff like that.
Hold on a second. And for those of you who hear that background noise, I apologize, but here at Langley Air Force Base, those are F-22s taken off. So an unfortunate yet awesome byproduct.
Sound of freedom.
Of the absolute sound of freedom. So apologize for the disturbance if you hear that, and if you do hear it, you're very welcome.
Yeah, it's for free.
Sorry.
So with these filing cabinets, and some of the guys were like, well, sir, what if we need them? I will buy you a new one if we need the 3-drawer filing cabinet. And it was just that little please go do this. If you see it, don't come check with me. Just do it. We'll figure the rest out on the backside. That kind of dominoed into other ideas. Guys coming to me and saying like, hey sir, can I paint a wall in my flight room? Well, what are you going to paint on this wall? Like, is it something that your mom is going to be okay with? Oh yeah, she'd be fine with this. Okay, then just go ahead and paint it, man. Like, you want me to buy you the paint? I'll buy you the paint.
Right. As long as your mom's not a Vegas hooker.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's finite details, but
Sure.
half-baked ideas, Chief. Like, you just move out. Well, like we can paint over that mural later. But the whole intent of it was just building up that courage and building up that decision-making ability, right? So if a guy came to me and he's like, "Hey, sir, I'm going to paint a giant bullseye on the roof of the building. Like, that's my contribution to morale." I'm going, maybe we can find a better contribution to your morale. Like, what's that going to accomplish,
Right. And it's one of those things is like, if your morale is tied up in that thing,
yeah,
perhaps I don't need you on my team.
Yep. Or maybe we need to reevaluate. Like, so what is that person seeing, right? Like, if they're going, maybe they're just looking around going, well, that dude's making a decision and that guy's making a decision and he's doing something, like, I want to do something and my idea is this. But that's the first time he's ever actually vocalized his idea. Now you're going, that's awesome, because you never want to crush motivation, right?
Amen.
But you can always steer that ship,
like the golf clap.
Absolutely,
Hey, sure.
Yeah, I applaud you for that idea. Let's bake it a little bit more.
I mean, that's
right?
the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, but
I appreciate you saying something.
You threw it out there, man. Let's go for something, but just not that.
Anyone else who doesn't have a stupid idea? But no, I was one of those airmen who I'd have a question. I'm like, no, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm like, well, shit, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just
you
throwing
want
it out
feedback?
there.
I'm giving you feedback, and now you smack me down when I say something.
And that's
not cool.
And you have to be like, and I try to be really, and it's not everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a gold star. I'm adamantly opposed to that.
Right.
Because people need to hear when, hey man, I know I said half-baked ideas, but that one's still in the box. Right? You haven't even added eggs or water to it yet. So let's pull in some other resources. But that's depending on where a person came from and depending on their experiences, that's probably all they know, right? So now you're afforded the opportunity to go, okay, well if that's all you know, how do I expose you to more? And you don't want to give them the answer, right? You want to expose them to more experiences so they can start to pull the answer for themselves, right? So maybe I just need to explain to that guy who wants to paint the bullseye on the top of the building, like, hey man, let me talk to you about airstrikes, and let me talk to you about CAS, and let me talk to you about what the pilot looks for. It's called a target. Here's this store called Target. You want to put one of those on our building. Does that make a lot of sense? Well, you put it into perspective, probably not.
Right. For those of you listening and watching, perspective. Right, so I've been saying this for months now. You need to allow for the sharing of perspectives up and down your respective chains of command, your organizational hierarchy, whatever it is. But again, you can't smack that lower level dude down. If you beat him down for bringing up an idea, he's never going to bring it up again. And you've just created a culture to where he's going to tell his friends, well, say something, I dare you.
Exactly.
Because they're going to smacking you down.
Yep.
So, so when you're talking about the sharing of perspective, is as you've gone through your career, do you have any good examples or bad examples from second lieutenant to right now where you can say that someone was either really great about that or really horrible about it?
Just about like trying to put themselves or like share the perspectives.
Someone just allow, and not relegating you to, oh, hold on, Junior, you're just a lieutenant, or hey, you haven't been here long enough yet. Why don't you watch a little bit longer, and they'll give you some input here in a little bit. Or perhaps someone went completely the other direction, like, wow, hey, thanks, Lieutenant. That's actually some pretty good feedback.
Yep. Man, I think a lot of some of my most positive experiences. There are two times that kind of stick out in my mind the most, and I think they'll kind of hit the mark on the question. So I was a lieutenant in Turkey, and I wasn't always a TACP officer. I started out as a personnel officer, so admin troop, and I love the career field. Like I learned a ton. I worked for some amazing squadron commanders and group commanders and the PAC FA1. But I was tasked with being the Projo or project officer for a change of command for the MSG, the group mission support group change of command. And I had this idea where like we're gonna do it in a hangar because it was Turkey, it was super hot, the hangar was cooler, shaded. There's a catwalk up top, right? So I had this vision of like the group commander, inbound and outbound, and the wing commander up there, like kind of on this catwalk, and then the formation below them. So like the troops are being presented to the commander, right, and squadrons and formation and stuff. And initially they kind of balked at it, right, where they're like, I don't know, like there's a railing there, and they couldn't see it, right? And I kind of backed off my idea, where I was like, okay, sir, yeah, no worries, we can move it down here, set up a stage, whatever the case is. But the outbound guy, he was like, I don't know, I can kind of see it. And he pulled me aside afterwards. He's like, Mike, maybe you just need to sell this one a little bit more. Like maybe you need to describe it a little bit more. Like maybe we need to go up there on that catwalk and you kind of tell us what you're envisioning. And we did just that. And both the wing commander and the inbound guy were like, all right, yeah, no, this has potential, and we can move and we can whatever. So like it was that moment in time where I learned from the outbound that like you change the perspective a little bit to get your vision across, right? And not to be discouraged when someone's like, hey, I just don't see it. Like, if it's a good idea, if it's a right idea, if it's a moral idea, push a little bit, change the perspective, change what they're looking at, and see what it'll get you. But that's kind of what sticks out in my head the most when it comes to an experience where, it didn't initially click right away, and you kind of had to work at it.
So with that, so sell your idea to the chain of command. For me, that comes down to shape the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And what I try and tell a lot of people is understand the concept of shaping the conversation, because if you're the person shaping the conversation, even if you're not right perhaps, or even if they disagree, you're having a conversation about what you want to talk about.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of value added in that. And then you were also talking about how the 3-drawer filing cabinet. I call that presented reality.
Yep.
And a lot of people see that, they're like, I don't know, they're here, so I assume they have to be here.
Some value.
I feel that people aren't trained to question their presented reality. And I know when I was a command chief, that really bit me in the butt quickly in my first few months there. And I've explained that in some other things, but what do you, because I mean, it really takes, I think somebody with a good vision to be able to show that to other people. So what are, let's go with your squadron right now, and we don't have to mention names, but as far as people who can see your vision or help own your vision, what do you think are some of the best traits that people innately have, or that you try and bring out of them as the senior leader inside an organization?
And that's great. So for me, like let's just start with vision in general, right? Vision, I think, is one of the scariest things in the world to try to cook up, right? Because you're trying to look into a crystal ball, or you're looking down the road to a point in the future where you're going, there's something out there, right? Like, and maybe it's blurry, maybe it's foggy, but you're going, if I set the standards, or if I set the conditions to build this thing or make this a reality, life will be better, in some form or fashion, whether it's technology or structure, or whatever the case might be. So you have to put yourself in front of an audience with a certain level of confidence, that I don't even want to say borderlines on arrogance, but you have to kind of swallow all of your fears, and put yourself in front of people and go, I have an idea, I've been tasked with being in charge, and this is what I think the idea is, right? And you got to be judicious with people's time, and you're trying to give them task and purpose, right? Because you want them to follow you, and you can't follow from the back, right? So you got to stand out, you got to be up front. You're going, I've got an idea, right? So for me, I made sure that I was the first one to take a 3-drawer filing cabinet out to the dumpster. Like, this one's in my office, I don't need it. It has 2 of 4 wheels. Like, see you later. Like, we're doing this. And then the vision just kind of grows, right? But the position you're in when you have that vision, whether you are scope of practice small or scope of practice large, it's not a one and done. It's an everyday thing. You're hitting on this, and you're thinking about it, and you're going, all right, man, we did this towards the vision yesterday, and it got us nowhere, or it got us to this point. What are we going to do with it today? For me, it was constantly having the conversation of, hey guys, where do we want to be in 2022, right? Like, some of us won't be in this organization, but this organization will still be here. So how do we make sure that whoever is here in our place isn't cursing our name up and down the hallways? I try to pride myself on being the guy where when my name is mentioned, folks don't cringe in fear, like, oh God, don't let him touch anything. It's more like, hey, that guy left it better than he found it at this one place. So back to the question of, like, how do you get people to follow? How do you empower them to do that stuff? It's a daily thing, and you have to believe in your own vision, and you can't be afraid of the vision. You have to build it a little bit more each day. It comes into focus a little bit more each day, and sometimes you're going to move the mile marker back, right? Like,
sure.
Like, we throw the line out there of, say, 2022, and then you get to 2020, and you're going, actually, I'm going to need until 2023 for this one, but it's okay. Like, you have to take ownership of that, right? Like, you stand up and you're like, folks have been doing great work, but we got to push the timeline back, or, hey, I got to change, this line of effort out with this one. So I liken it to tending a garden. It's constant maintenance. It's the weeding and watering and feeding of everything that you're trying to grow within the garden. And I think that's what kind of gets folks on board. But it starts with you having the confidence to stand up and go, this is my vision, and then the energy and the foresight to keep getting after it, and that will eventually garner you the support and the folks that you need. And the folks that aren't into it or that aren't going to get on board, like that's fine. There's no love lost there.
You bet.
Like, cool. Like, if it doesn't, you know, light your fire, then it doesn't light your fire. Like, you know, just don't be a saboteur, obviously, but
Sure.
You know, yeah, we can still all get along.
Yeah, you know, just because we happen to disagree, doesn't mean that anyone is more or less right or wrong. You just you happen to be in the position of authority, and we'll go from there. And gosh, again, as my man crush for you grows, again, like so many things we've talked about in the podcast, but just going here, you know, you're talking about, you know, the consistency of how you do things.
Yeah.
Because I used to tell people, you know, hey, it's about getting your reps in.
Yep.
You know, I'm a big NFL guy.
Sure.
So you have to get your reps in. I was like, no. It's about getting Hall of Fame reps.
Yeah.
And then it's about getting consistent
Yep.
Hall of Fame reps. You know, to make sure that you're really solidifying that vision, telling people where to go. And I'm a huge follower of Steve Jobs, you know, and his quotes, and just, you know, how to vision, how to adjust or adapt or set your organization up for them to evolve for future things that end up happening. Being judicious with time.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and that's probably what we'll kind of do. Probably a quick segue here is I have this tattoo of the Norse Valknut.
Nice. Yeah.
The symbol is a homage to slain and fallen soldiers.
Of course. Yeah.
So I put it deliberately under my watch.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as a reminder that, you know, time has ran out for so many of our friends.
I like that. That's
and
cool.
then also, you know, for me, time waits for no man.
It does not. No.
And, you know, I've got to get out and be awesome. But kind of like you're talking about is judicious with time. It's one of the best gifts I think any leader can give back to their team in contemporary society is just white space on their calendar.
Absolutely.
So A, what do you do to help people get white space on their calendar? And then as a squadron commander, as a husband, as a father, what do you to make sure that you're doing what's right for you?
Yeah.
That something that restores your soul.
Actually, I just talked to someone else about this today. I talked to one of the folks that we were out with today, this morning, about this topic. Okay, so white space for the folks that I'm charged with, right? For me, you know, set the vision, right? Like, get it out there. Be the cheerleader. You know, be the person that's like, all right, you know, boys, we're taking this hill. We're going this direction. And then demonstrating when it's time to take a knee, right? So for me, it's always a leading by example. You know, the job was there before me. The job is going to be there after me. It is possible to leave it better than you found it and not work a 20-hour day, right? Like, not be constantly on the email, the phone, the whatever the case is. So giving time back is not, for me, it's not just, hey, here's the afternoon off, or here's, you know, next Monday off. For me, I feel that I appreciate time back more when the time that I've already spent has been value added, right? So the time that I spend, if I have clear task and purpose, and I can step back and have a sense of like accomplishment and pride, and okay, cool, we're here. Now that white space, now when the boss says like, hey, it's 2:00 on a Friday, y'all knock it off, and I'll catch up with you on Monday, have a safe, fun weekend. Nobody's thinking about what didn't get done.
Sure.
Like, so for me, giving time back is not just a matter of like, hey, folks, we're going to take Friday off, or we're going to take the afternoon off. It's paying attention to the atmospherics in the building, paying attention to the squadron, seeing and recognizing like, ooh, a TDY is about to come up, and you're going to be away from the family for 2 weeks. Yeah, let's work hard until Thursday, and then we're going to call knock it off, you know, Friday sometime after PT or whatever the case is. Because when people leave with a sense of accomplishment, now they're not looking over their shoulder going, there's a nagging thing that's still tugging at me. That bleeds into your question of, you know, as a squadron commander, as a husband, as a father, how do I make sure that, you know, one, I'm taking time for myself, and two, I'm not stealing time from my family, right? So within our organization, you know, the microcosm of a squadron within, you know, the larger Air Force, it's developing community, it's developing culture. My wife and I, you know, big proponents of how do we develop community, right? Like, how is everybody welcome, you know, and how is everybody value added? So specifically, even for the spouses and the kids of our squadron, I've tried to make it very clear that, hey, this is a warm, safe place for you to land, no matter what, right? Like, if your husband's TDY, if your spouse is deployed, like, if you were passing by this building and you're bored, how do I make this building an inviting, welcoming place so that you can understand, like, there is reprieve here and not just at home? Like, how does this not become a 9 to 5, got to punch the time card kind of job? So that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is that leading by example. So making sure that everybody has task and purpose and there's relevance. The same goes for me too. Like I'm not just going to work on like whatever that good idea is for the day, right? So for me, it's now tethered back to the vision. Like, okay, what am I doing today that's tied to this vision down the road that's going to leave things better than I found it? Like everything's very metaphysical, right? Like everything complements each other. Like there's complementing interests everywhere. And I feel that when you structure things in that nature, you're gonna start to tether more people to you, right? Like if you imagine you're kind of marching down a road and more people are like, hey, that's a cool idea. Like your crowd gets bigger and the movement gets bigger, and then eventually like you get to this goal and you've got all this talent that has like helped build the goal. I think that's what gets you there faster, or get you there, with a lot of energy. And so for me personally, like I try not to take a laptop home. When I'm home, I try to be home, right? Like I'm not, like I want to be able to call my squadron soup and not talk about work. And I want to be able to have a personal connection that is outside of the uniform. I want to be able to have dinner with other families in the squadron with my family, right? As just people, essentially.
So you're saying you work with human beings every day?
As a matter of fact, I do. They don't take batteries. It's weird.
Huh.
Go figure.
Weird.
So that's my humble perspective on it, and it's I think we learn more about people. We become more refreshed, right? Like we talk about or a specific example is the kind of the 2-week Christmas exodus, right? Where the squadron goes into skeleton manning, and you have that week of Christmas, week of New Year's. I made sure that when we started December, I was like, all right, by this day, date, and time when we're about to break for these 2 weeks, like these are the 3 things that we just need to finish up, right? Like let's time it so that we finish these 3 projects, and they weren't like monumental, but they were stuff that were had been started, and we just didn't want to leave hanging. I was like, let's finish these 3 things on this day, date, and time, so that when we send our flights away, when we send these people away, to be with their families for the holidays, they're not going, well, I got some free time today on my day off when I shouldn't be in the squadron, so I'm going to go finish this thing in the flight room, or I'm going to go, double check those 1800s. Because we work in a community of motivated type A people, right? Like, and you have to be cognizant of that. So the ability to let someone push away from the table at the end of a day with that sense of accomplishment, so that they're not looking over their shoulder and going, oh man, I got 2 hours tonight, I should run back to the shop. Right. Or, Saturdays are slow days for me and nobody's going to be in the building, so I'm going to run back there and, I'll knock it out then. The last thing I'll leave with is that I try to get up early, 5 o'clock every day, because that 2 hours of quiet, 5 to 7, before, Natalie and the kids start to wake up, or before like dudes start trickling into the building, that's when I can think, that's when I can nug out some emails, that's when I can get an extra workout in if that's what I need, and that way it's not stealing time from anybody else. Right. Because Natalie and the kids are sleeping, so don't worry about it. Everybody else is doing their thing with their families, so we don't worry about it. Then when 4:30, 5 o'clock hits, I'm able to leave going, you know what, I'm cool, I'll be back here tomorrow, and I can take the kid to wrestling practice, or I can just sit and watch a baking show with the wife. It's no big deal.
And so that kind of ties into a couple different things. I know we mentioned it today at lunch that I'm a big football guy. Mm-hmm. So many things that I do is just always with a football analogy. So again, if you're listening, if you're watching, and you are not a fan of football, you absolutely hate my guts, because all this just falls flat for you. So for that, I apologize. But moving on. So for when you're, I'm a big pro football fan, lifelong Cleveland Brown fan, also Kansas City Chiefs. When you talk about, you hear the head coaches, when they talk about, what they win or lose, is that they need to be effective on all 3 sides of the ball, whether it's offense, defense, and special teams.
Yep.
I've applied that to a leadership context to where it has to be personal, professional, and self.
Okay, all right.
Self different than personal life.
Yeah.
So what would you say some of the things that you do are? What are some of the goals that you have, perhaps, when it comes to you personally, professionally, and then selfishly? But I don't mean selfishly in a bad sense.
No. I love the term selfishly, to be honest with you. It's something that I've started to use, because I think it helps trigger an acknowledgement of, hey, I'm a person too. Like,
right.
I've got goals, I've got motivations, and I think it helps trigger an attention with whoever you're talking to, where they're going, well, how can I help you? Like, how can I help this quote unquote selfish goal that you're about to tell me about? And it could be like, well, selfishly, I want to go build, houses and Habitat for Humanity for the next 2 weeks, and I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to ask for time off work. You would have to be a really cold-hearted son of a gun to say, you know what, sorry, I'm gonna need you here to get rid of these three-door filing cabinets for the next 2 weeks. Getting back to the time for self, we're looking at it going, for me, it's self-reflection. It's critical thought on my person, right? So the last 15, 16 plus years, it starts with a little bit of responsibility and then a little bit more responsibility, and then I'm sure you've experienced it, like suddenly you're charged with like a whole wing of people, right? And you go from just like a face in the crowd to suddenly like you're living in this fishbowl, and everybody can see what you do, and things are scrutinized, and so for me it's a matter of taking a hard look at the end of the day and going, all right, did I take the right amount of time? Did I think this one through? And in asking those questions and in thinking about that, like you have to be super honest, right?
Sure.
Like, so this is not something where I sit down with Natalie and I'm like, hey, did I do this right today? Because she's going to be honest with me no matter what, but that's still someone else, right? Like this needs to be a moment in time, and it doesn't have to be like an hour, 2 hours. Like this has to be just a moment in time where you're going to go, ooh, like did I hit the mark on this one? And nobody else has to know about this honest moment but you and yourself, and that's pretty much it. But if you can, there's a certain level of mastery to it, and again, it's all internal, right? Like nobody's going to look at me and go, you know what, Mike, here's your report card, you have A+ self-reflection. So this ties into like your upbringing, your character, your sense of belonging, your sense of purpose. So self-reflection is huge for me, and then taking the time to develop hobbies outside of military stuff, right? Like I saw it was on Facebook, Ken Moon Pie, right? He posted something on Facebook where he's like, hey, how come every TACP has to have like cleared hot, ROMAT, or JTAC somewhere in their email address asking for a friend? And that struck me as funny, because like that's our sense of purpose, right? Or like our sense of belonging. Like we all like we're TACPs, we're TACP officers, we're JTACs. Like this is what we tether ourselves to. I think it's important to try to find things that motivate us outside of like our organic nuclear value to the nation and to each other's teammates, and that can be something as simple as like brewing beer or woodworking, or just anything. So the ability to do self-reflection and the ability to take a minute and be curious about the world outside of where you are and outside of your bubble. I think those are some of those are the two primary things that I try to be true to when it's developing that third side of the football that you're saying, the whole like self side.
So the thing you brought up there is just kind of figuring out what motivates you, and what, as I'm fond of saying, I've already said it once here, is find what restores your soul.
Yes.
And then a lot of that comes from Dr. Janelle McCauley. I know we've been talking about her concept of just put it on your oxygen mask.
Yeah.
And that before, if you're in an airplane, there's a sudden drop in cabin pressure and oxygen masks fall from the ceiling, please put on your oxygen mask before you help the person next to you.
Yep.
And this goes back, and again, I love you. Just feel that you need to get right with you. Put on your oxygen mask first. Be right with you. Take the 2 hours in the morning. Do what restores your soul.
Yep.
Do what you need to do for you, so you can be right for other people. And while at face value, that's probably selfish. That's good business.
It is.
Like that's absolutely a smart way to go about things. And then the last thing we'll talk about here before we roll into break is, you heard me mention it at lunch today, again, going back to football analogy, is that right now we're having the NFL Combine in preparation for the 2019 NFL Draft, which I don't care about because I already got Baker Mayfield last year.
Of course.
So I'm kind of set. We have the 18th pick.
Pride yourself on picking winners, huh?
year, right? So that was we actually had 2 good years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Look,
I don't want to say it,
judge.
Chachi. Right? But
nowhere to go but up, right?
yeah. Yeah, it was a good season last year.
It was.
God,
It was.
And if not for our kicker at the beginning of the year and some refs, we should have won the NFC or the AFC North.
Of course.
So frustrating. Anyway, squirrel.
Better location.
For the combine here, and for our viewers and our listeners out there, I want you to take this time and make this personal for you. Is that if your leaders were going through an NFL combine, right? So if Lieutenant Colonel Mike Hayek had to go through a combine for squadron commanders, and you're going to get drafted by your squadron of men and women, displaying certain traits or seeing you in a certain type of environment, conduct yourself a certain way, what do you think should be the benchmark events or tests that would be in this type of combine for commanders? And then if you were running a combine to hire your senior leaders, officer or enlisted, what would you want their combine to consist of?
Okay. No, that's awesome. I think that's a really creative framework to discuss this in. I would start first by eliminating any possibility of an event where I would have to reach something from the top shelf, because that would obviously require a stool or a ladder of some sort, because I'm not a man of stature. So anything that is height related, automatic no go. Like that one's just, we're throwing that one out there.
Fair.
No, but so for me, right, I'm looking at it as how do we groom, how do we grow, how do we develop, right? And we always lay a foundation. So high school was a foundation, university was a foundation, tech training was a foundation, and so we're starting again back to scope of practice. And so you have a scope of practice where you were charged with, hey man, here's your responsibility. Like, make it to school on time, get good grades, play a sport, get 8 hours of sleep, wear a belt. Like, bueno, you can do this. Once you master that, like, okay, now we're gonna try a little bit more. Now we're gonna move you out of the house, still try to get 8 hours of sleep, wear a belt, go to class, get good grades, find a job now, right? So we're expanding the scope of practice. Same goes into the military, right? Moving out of the house, like, okay, you are charged with, sheet metal welding, or, understanding, plurf to dagger and map and compass and all these fun basics. And then as you make rank, as you progress, like, scope of practice grows. So when you get to the point of, say, squadron, superintendent or chief enlisted advisor or squadron commander, whatever the case is, you have a foundation that has enabled you to interact with people, right? And interact on different levels, and you base that interaction off of traits and qualities and skills that you've either learned or been taught. So now you get to this point, right, where you're a chief, you're a lieutenant colonel, whatever the case is, senior master sergeant. For this combine now, like this idea, which this is a really fun question. For me, it's all about social interaction at this point in time, and the term emotional intelligence, right? Like your ability to.
As I had already written down, emotional intelligence. I don't know if you could see that.
I didn't cheat.
I didn't but you couldn't, because I'm writing under as my man crush grows.
So for me, it's emotional intelligence. It's that ability to recognize a fellow human being's emotions, sense of self-worth, sense of self-worth within the organization. So now, long description to get to said combine. Like, now the said combine would involve social events, right? But natural, organic social events. So you now get placed in a room at a restaurant, and you have to just go talk with people, and you have to hang out. But I would make it sporty, right? Like, I'd throw some weirdos in there, right? Like someone who just is like a I hope I don't offend any listeners, like a cat woman, like a lady who has like 900
the old
cats.
Weird cat lady smells like cat piss.
Exactly, but she's the one that wants to talk to you the most, right? Like, she's the one grabbing your sleeve, like, oh, let me tell you about Pedro. And like, that's her favorite cat or something that lives under the bed. Like, so how you would deal with that, right? Like, you can't be the guy that's a wallflower that's like, oh God, but then you also can't be the dude that's in the center of the room, garnering all the attention, right? Like I would look for the person that can go find the weird cat lady and then pair her up with like the weird bow tie guy, right? Like, oh, you two would be perfect for each other, not in a Match.com sense, but in a like, hey, you guys talk about weird stuff together, like have conversation. This
building
would be nice.
Teams.
That's all it is, building teams. So this combine would involve different scenarios of whether it's a restaurant or even a kid's birthday party. A dear friend of mine and a great advisor, mentor, just lifelong teammate, Tim Hahn. Like, his big thing is camping trips, right? He's like, you formulate a new leadership team, camping trip. Let's go get weird in the woods. Like, that's pretty much it. I've never had the good fortune of taking a camping trip with Tim Hahn. But honestly, I've spent so much time with him that I don't think I need to. I think we've just gotten weird in public,
Nice.
which has accomplished what we needed to accomplish. But I think he's onto something, though. Where, like, you have to go, like, interact with people, and it has to be away from work. It has to be out of the uniform, because when you're charged with the level of responsibility that a command chief or a squadron commander is charged with, you can rely on the tactical, like, you can rely on that skilled training you've received. But when you get to this point, you have to be a person that can listen to and hear everybody. And that is, like, for you, I'm sure, like, a couple hundred people on a base, a couple thousand people on a base. For me, it's 65 souls plus their families plus their kids. Like, I have to be able to be a person and a human being and recognize, like, how do I just have a conversation that's about you, right? Like, how do I have a conversation that's going to leave you feeling a sense of self-worth, pride, and dignity that's going to make you want to come back, and that's going to make you want to be part of, our community and our organization. Because hopefully they'll come back with ideas and, that motivation to, like, leave it better than they found it. And now you're left going, cool, I have this whole organization of people that, like, even on a bad day, they're like, hey, I still like being here, and I think that's what, that's what makes what we do so awesome, and it makes what we do so critically important. And I say we, not in the, like, leadership sense, but just the community, like, within
as military members.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I wholeheartedly that's just one of those things I hang my hat on.
And so but before we go into break, I think just super important point there is that you're leading people who have volunteered to put their lives on the line.
Yeah.
That there's nothing wrong with creating that personal relationship with them.
Absolutely.
Now we can talk about fraternization and stuff, but while there's probably a fine line there, Tim Pachesa speaking personally, a lot of that has gone the way of the dodo.
Yes.
And I really think we need to evaluate and or reevaluate that, because we're not fighting the wars that we did 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. That's just not how we fight wars anymore.
Correct.
And so I really think we need to reevaluate and understand what is truly at play for team development, because now we have our teams are so small.
Yes.
And they have charged with such a great mission that we really need to understand the human behind the gun.
Yep. I think education, education and just knowledge cultivates that, right? Because you have to teach folks, right? Like, there has to be a shared understanding of each other's responsibilities, right? So I have to be able to look at that senior airman and understand, dude, your responsibilities are, these trucks, this equipment, and these academics, and that is it. And then he has to understand, like, wow, the boss has to care about me, and he has to understand me and who I am, and he needs to, like, meet my parents if they come in to visit me, or meet my fiance, whatever the case is. But understand that, like that's not business. That's me caring about you as a human being. That's you caring about me as a human being, because he has to recognize Natalie. He has to recognize the kids, not in an egotistical or arrogant sense, but just in a, like, hey, that's a part of the commander, right? Like, that's a part of Colonel Hayek. I want to meet these people, right? Because that's how we share each other. But then at the end of the day, we also have to recognize, like, okay, I have my responsibilities, and my responsibilities dictate a line that this is where we're at, right? And so I think if we share and communicate and educate on our responsibilities within our roles, we can recognize, all right, this is when I'm in my role, and here are my limitations and capabilities, here are your limitations and capabilities, and then when we are out of those roles, here's how I share part of my life with you. Like, here's how I meet, your wife, my wife, that kind of thing. And it's natural and it's normal, right? Like, there's not an issue with it. So, but I totally agree with you. Like, our community is so small, and what we're charged with doing is such a, like, heavy, not a negative burden to bear, but it is a cross to bear. But I'd rather be the guy that bears it than not.
You bet.
My instructor supervisor at tech school, Sergeant Jen, TJ Jen, he talked to Natalie. He pulled Natalie aside and he's like, "Hey, your husband's gonna hate me at some point during all this." And she goes, "Nope. I think he's gonna really appreciate you and really respect you because you have a vested interest in his survival, and he has a vested interest in your survival." And it was really profound, right? Where he and I talked about it later after the fact. He's like, "Hey, Acer, I need you to care about me and my family the same way I care about you and your family because that's how we're gonna make it out alive." And that has just always resonated with me.
Wow. So caring, as if it were the first letter in my CAPE concept of caring, alignment, perspective, and expectation. So we'll kind of roll this into our first break. We'll kind of refill on some good Franziskaner German beer, sipping on some of our beloved Leadsinger's whiskey made by some Air Force TACPs. But we'll catch you right back after this break. Prost. Prost. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution, and back again here with Lieutenant Colonel Mike Hayek, coming back from break. Again, great conversation. Super excited just for the stuff that we talk about at break. But kind of wrapping up the end of the first session was you were talking about just having the conversation with people. And so, and the thing that I say time and time again, and you've heard it if you listen to any of the podcasts or watch any of these Leaders with Leaders, is leadership is just about getting the conversation right.
Yep.
At a bare minimum, the application of leadership at its smallest like atomic level is just two people getting the conversation right.
Yeah.
And then two people or more gets into the bigger and macro sense of leadership. So I really like that. And so as far as getting the conversation right, you mentioned this with the 3-drawer filing cabinets.
Yes.
That is now one of your pet peeves.
It is, yes.
So,
and really we can expound on that, Chief, where the 3-drawer filing cabinets for me represents things that don't make sense.
sure.
And I recognized the 3-drawer filing cabinets, and I looked around and I saw other things. So the 3-drawer filing cabinets led into the fact that like there's no decision making here. There's no empowerment, right? Like these things are just sitting here. They're collecting dust, and that led to the conversation, right?
Sure.
And so the conversation was, well, why and what about and is there something? And you kind of keep going down that road, but it never got to the point of me directing. It was the point of it was let's lead, right? Like let's have this conversation. Like maybe you know something I don't know. Maybe these 3-drawer filing cabinets are part of the structural integrity of this entire building, and I can't get rid of a single one of them. I don't know. Like maybe if I pull one, like
it's holding up the wall or holding down the floor.
Yeah,
you mentioned
legitimately. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna like move one and it's a Wile E. Coyote thing, and I go through the roof, right?
But to me, it's a relic of an age long gone by.
Yes.
We don't need those. We store all the stuff online.
Shared drives.
On the shared drive, whatever.
And that was the conversation. And that's where I was like, well, hey guys, we don't put papers in them. And then it tripped through.
Unless like I use it to hide my booze.
Yeah.
At work, okay. Have one for a bar.
Right. Yeah,
Fine.
that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
And maybe we need to develop a culture of responsibility where, hey, you don't have to hide it in a desk drawer. Maybe it's a prominent trophy. I don't know.
Heaven forbid we empower people to operate with common sense.
And be responsible.
And I mentioned this before, when I was downrange as the command chief, the absent command chief at the time, so the Chief Master Sergeant Joe Montgomery, just recently retired. And he said that phrase, like, airmen are not empowered to operate with common sense.
Yep.
And that quote kind of shook me to the very ground. But again, because, as far as what kind of level of responsibility do we give to our people, not just in a work context, but as we were discussing at break, is that we have a social responsibility.
Yes.
So I like for all the viewers and listeners out there, talk about your understanding of our social responsibility and how you would like that kind of spread throughout the world.
Sure. So for me, cultural social responsibility, right? Going back to scope of practice, where a person is, right? Like you are what you know, right? And so we as military members, like, I don't know about you, but I've moved every 2 years on average for essentially the last 16 years. I've had 9-ish assignments. Throw in the deployments, the TDYs, everything else. Like we've been around the world 4 times. We as military members have a responsibility to share our experiences with society, right? Like to alleviate mystique and to inspire folks to know that, like, hey, anybody can do this. If the right application and focus and initiative and things of that nature. But the point is that you never know who you're going to inspire. You never know who is watching you, and it's not a responsibility to go around inspiring people. It's a social responsibility to share your story, right?
Sure.
And it's not egotistical and it's not arrogant. It's just the sheer fact that, through service to our nation and through service to the country, we have been afforded amazing opportunities to live in Europe, live in Korea, deploy to the Middle East. For as scary and as challenging as that is, there's still something to be said about, like, I've set foot in Iraq. Like, I lived in Iraq for 7 months. I've lived in Afghanistan for 6 months. I traveled to every country within the AOR. Sharing those stories is a social responsibility that we have, so that someone somewhere is going to go, wow, like that's what it offers. Like that's what I can do. Now, I caveat this with experiences will vary, obviously,
Sure.
and I reserve the right to be wrong at some point in time. But for the most part, like, you never know, right? Like, you never know what you're going to inspire someone to go out and do. Maybe just a conversation with you where you're going, hey man, I lived in Iraq for 7 months doing my job, right? Like, my kids know it as dad goes to work in another country. But that for them has alleviated any fear, and I shouldn't say any fear, but it alleviates a lot of the fear of, hey guys, we're going somewhere new. Like,
Right.
we're PCSing, right?
Part of their expectation.
Exactly. Like, you're managing those expectations through education and a shared understanding of experiences, right? And then coming back to being a leader and a human being, it's, you take all that and you take that responsibility, and then you apply the requirement to not only listen to, but actually hear someone else's story and hear their questions, internalize them, process them, and then have that conversation where you're going, hey dude, I got your question, like, here's how I can relate to it, here was my experience, and then here's the expectation if you go out on this, right? Like, there's experiences that we've had that we can totally use to help teach people, and it's all through conversation. Like, none of it has to be PowerPoint, none of it has to be on a whiteboard.
Just getting the conversation right.
That's it. Like, let's just go out, let's kill a beer together and have conversation. That's pretty much it.
So on that for the final thing, because we ran long for the first session, and you do this, what we thought was maybe 20, 25 minutes was about 50 minutes. So we were just woefully unaware.
Shy over.
Try not to make these too outrageously long.
Just
for
a bit
folks.
outside.
Just how can Vaughn put these bitches so close? So just speak about some of that. Whether you're going to go out and just talk to people and the responsibility. You shared a story with me earlier this week,
Yeah.
and I'll just say pirate.
Sure. Got it.
So I'm going to ask you to share that story if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
But what I want everyone to listen to is just listen, because don't take this as everyone can go out and do this. I need you to listen for what exactly this story is, who this story was with, what this story, the environmental surrounding this story, and for me, it's about building a great culture.
Yep.
And so, sir, take it away.
Absolutely. So, the term pirate, the word pirate, has now it's I don't know if you maybe call it notorious, maybe call it infamous within our little circle, out there in Bavaria. TDY with the leadership team.
I'm sorry. So his squadron is about call it hour 15, hour and a half, almost due north of Munich in Germany, on the east side of Germany.
Yep. So leadership team goes out on a TDY, myself and 3 others, and we're in Thessaloniki, Greece, right? So now we're getting to, hey, my social responsibility to share my story, share my experience, and then we get back to the conversation where it's a small team, it's a tight unit, vested interest in each other's families and motivations and things like that. So we're at this conference and we're in Thessaloniki, Greece, and it's a coastal town, and so we're walking down the boardwalk, we're looking for a place to eat, and we stop, right, and we're like, there's the vision, right? It's off in the distance, there's a silhouette, and it only takes one guy to go, is that a pirate ship? And as a matter of fact, and it was a pirate ship, and we're not talking like like Jake and the Neverland Pirates pirate ship. We're talking like full on Johnny Depp, like Black Pearl, like it's right there, man. And we're like, no way, like, god dang, like, one guy's like, this is a sign, like this is a sign from our Lord Jesus, like,
we're now on a mission from God.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's dark out, got sunglasses on, pack of cigarettes. So we walk up, we're like, there's no way, man. Sign right out in front says, has the menu, you know, alcoholic drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, and asks the question like, hey man, how much for, you know, the 3-hour tour, right? The pirate ship tour. It's like, oh man, no charge, head on in. No, like seriously, like how much does this cost? Nah, head on in. Deal was you had to buy at least one drink, because it makes a zip around the harbor, right? Doesn't go anywhere. So we're like, well, what the hell? Like, we'll give it a shot, man. We're gonna hop on this pirate ship, have a drink. So we hop on the pirate ship, have a drink, and it just does a NASCAR, you know, left-hand turn, pretty much the entire way around the track. And one lap turns into 2 laps, turns into 3 laps, and we rallied around this pirate ship, because as we're on this pirate ship, like we're not in uniform, we're not at desk, we're not at a staff meeting, we're not, you know, on the OP, we're not out in the field. We're just 4 dudes, right? Like, we're 4 dudes that are charged with responsibility, that are trying to build and grow, and we all have ideas and motivations, and you know, we're breaking down boundaries and barriers. We're doing the whole storming, norming, forming thing, right? But we're doing it on a pirate ship, right? And we're doing it on a pirate ship in Thessaloniki, Greece. And we got our pirate mugs, and we went from, you know, obviously the coherent, like, hey, that's a great idea, to yar, right? So it's become this cultural thing with us within the squadron, where like you can give that acknowledgement of a yar, right? And then that was how we broke down the boundaries. That was our team building moment, right? And that's how we learned about each other. That's how we, you know, started to write down on bar napkins, and, you know, laugh and joke and carry on and share experiences and have fun. And you don't need a pirate ship to do this. Like, ours just happened to be on a pirate ship. But I think you can apply it as a metaphor, where it's like, hey man, what's your pirate ship, right? Like,
absolutely.
And looking back on it, having this conversation now, where you're like, God dang, like this is on a pirate ship in a foreign country, like. We are rebels.
And one of the most gorgeous places in the world.
It was phenomenal. We're just like, we are rebels. We are out there. Like, you know, we're against the grain a little bit, but right. With the right communication and the right organization, and then you take the symbolism of a ship, right? So now it's like you can only count on you and your shipmates and your teammates and your plank owners, and you're out in the ocean and you're doing this stuff like so. So for my time so far as a commander, and for this event, you know, that happened in Thessaloniki, Greece, of sharing, you know, what was supposed to be like a little 20-minute roundabout turning into a, you know, 4-hour tour on, you know, the Caribbean of Thessaloniki, Greece. That has been honestly like something that my leadership team and I fall back on, you know, where it's like, hey, this is where it started. This is where we formed our nucleus. And it's not exclusive. That's my favorite part, right? It's not exclusive. You know, so for some of the leadership that wasn't with us on that TDY, there have been other TDYs, and now it's become a, hey man, are we going to talk about pirate stuff tonight? Like, we can do some pirating tonight?
Yeah. Hey, we totally got to pirate it up tonight.
Exactly. Like, and it becomes that thing, and it's inclusive, where it's like, hey man, is he ready to be a pirate? Like, let's bring this dude in and let him be a pirate. Like, let's hear his ideas. You know, let's do this. Let's see where it takes us. Like, let's get on the pirate ship and go somewhere. So that's my pirate story, and that's I'm probably gonna incorporate that into the old change of command speech. You know, back in the future in 2020, knock on wood. But it's something that is cool, you know, and it's something that has resonated with us, and it's something that we kind of rally around. And again, inclusive, not exclusive. Like, that's the biggest thing with it.
I can think of no better way to end an interview than with that story. And just a quick recap, as obviously I'm going to focus on CAPE, what I believe is a leadership methodology, what I believe as a way of capturing lessons learned, and what I believe as a way of solving conflict, because I define conflict as the convergence of competing expectations. But here, you know, so we talked about experience and ideas, that's some perspective. We talked about inspire and motivate people speaking out, that's just you caring for getting them to do that. Scope of practice, that's going to be alignment. Awesome. You know, aligning all these different scopes of practice to go forward. We talked about vision. That's more alignment. We talked about being judicious with time because you're caring. We're talking about quality, consistent reps. Mm-hmm. These are expectations. We're talking about tending a garden. You know, that's a little bit more expectation, a little bit more perspective, a little bit more alignment for what you have to do. Pet peeves and scar tissue perspective. You know, the 3 things that you wanted to get done before Christmas break, expectations. Again, any deviation to an expectation causes frustration. So putting that out there ahead of time is huge. And then, you know, social responsibility is now an expectation for all the viewers and listeners out there. But again, the pirate story is CAPE personified. Because you're caring about each other, you're caring about the team, you're caring about the relationship, you're building that culture, and now you're aligning your thoughts and interests together.
Yep.
You're sitting there talking, probably having a few drinks, sharing different perspectives,
Yep.
and have a little bit of truth lube,
Yep.
just the free flow of communication. And then lastly, that's going to end with expectations.
Yes.
Not an assumption or anticipation, but an expectation.
Absolutely.
So with that, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Hayek, thank you very much for your time.
Chief.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the Cape Lead
As always.
Revolution. And educate, anticipate, and dominate.
Pros.
And arr.